Welcome to the webinar European Green Deal and Defense, organized by the EURODEFense EWG 1B Working Group. I would like to inform you that this event will be recorded, and if you'd like to ask any questions to our guest speakers, please wait until the end of their presentations when we move on to the debate, or you can simply write them in the group chat. Before we start, I would also like to thank our guest speakers for their presence here today and express a particular note of gratitude to Miguel Gomes, President of the EURODEFense Jovem Portugal, for his role in the organization of the event. I will now give the word to Mr. Patrice Mompeyssin for a brief welcome speech. I would just like to introduce Mr. Patrice. He is a Brigadier General and Secretary General of the EURODEFense Network with a long and rich career at EURODEFense France and in the French Army. He graduated at the renowned Academy of Saint-Cyr. He had throughout his career numerous command missions in France and abroad, both in the service of the French Army and NATO. So, Mr. Patrice, if you please.
So, thank you very much, Annie, to introduce me. So, I would like to thank first all the participants to this second webinar of the network, EURODEFense network. So, a few words on the network. We have associations in 15 countries in Europe, from west to east to north and to south. And the aim of all the association is to work for to have a better defense in Europe, whatever is the solution, and we discuss about this solution. And these associations are linked by a charter, and we write reports and we study different subjects. And one subject is which has just started is energy, climate, security and defense. And I would like to thank first those who have organized this webinar, in particular the young members of EURODEFense Portugal, Jovem, in particular Miguel Carvalho Gomes, who have prepared that, and also the Secretary General, José Alberto Maia Pereira. They have done huge work in a short time, because it started really at the beginning of the month of September. And I think in 1 month to prepare such a meeting was quite a challenge. So it was prepared. They are member of the group number 1, which is outreach. There are not only young members, but most of the members are young, and it's a platform for them to participate in the activities. So we'll not give conclusion today because the working group is just starting, but perhaps we will pick with you some ideas. So what could I say? That it's obvious that energy and security and defense are linked. It's a strategic part of for all states. A lack of supplies of energy can be catastrophic. Energy may have, and there is a strong probability that the consumption of energy has an impact on the climate change. The climate change has an impact on security and defense. For example, on migrations, it could be force populations to go north. And lastly, it will be one topic made by Jan Wind. Armed forces are directly concerned by energy issues, and they can take part in saving the planet. So that's what I wanted to say first. So I give the floor now to the moderator, Annie, a brilliant young lady, which is a member of Jovem Portugal. She has many degrees and university title, degree in political science and international relations, and she is a master student in security and justice. She has done also a course at the military university, and she is very much engaged in as a benevolent, I think, at the Young Educator European Association, and she's a member of 1 Hour for Europe. So you see that she is very much engaged in European issues. So thank you, Annie Davidova. I give you the floor now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mompeyssin. We will now begin our presentations. I'd like to introduce and welcome Mr. Eduardo Caetano de Sousa. He is a colonel of the Portuguese Army, now retired, an energy geopolitics analyst and EURODEFense Portugal board member. He has a master's degree in international relations and diplomatic policy, and is the author of several books, articles, and reports on geopolitics, energy, and history. So, Mr. Eduardo, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Annie. Good afternoon to all, and thank you, Patrice, Mompeyssin, Acting Secretary General of the EURODEFense Network, for your kind introductory words. Merci beaucoup. My first words are to thank the organizers, the EURODEFense EWG 1B working group, and special Miguel Gomes and the whole EURODEFense Youth Portugal for your great job. A special word of greeting, Dr. António Figueiredo Lopes, President of the EURODEFense Portugal, and Secretary General, Dr. José Alberto Pereira. Thank you for your support. Also to my distinguished colleagues and speakers of the working group 26B, Juan López Díaz, Jean-Charles Boulat, and Jean Lind. Allow me, therefore, to take this opportunity to pay sincere tribute to all those who work and cooperate within the different institutions like EURODEFense, which make a great contribution to a deeper and knowledgeable perception of Europe in the multiplicity of its aspects. I hope this presentation will be a fruitful and productive one and enjoyable as well. And I will give you, it's my intention to give you some inputs about energy, climate, security, and defense, the same title of the EWG 26B group, in which I am the coordinator. A great American baseball player and philosopher, Yogi Berra, said one day about the future, "It's pretty fair, but it doesn't seem like it." And what is true? When we apply this feeling to the new energy alternative, we are facing a global phenomenon that constitutes a 21st century challenge. And as Mr. Alexander Murchev wrote in a recent book, and I quote, "Renewable sources of energy, such as solar, wind, biofuels, hydro, geothermal, tidal, and wave, have undergone a process of transformation that promises to provide practical answers to energy and demand issues, and charts the future of energy use and overall interaction with nature." And the last 2 decades witnessed an amazing technical and scientific development in the area of alternative energy, creating the current energy transition, as you know. And this transformation were associated with the intense social and political outcry of the civil society linked to the issues of environmental and climate change, quite different from other energy transitions in previous centuries. The need for urgent decarbonization of our planet became a clear global purpose, and climate concerns also became the main goal of the United Nations and other international organizations. The European Union has defined the fight against climate change as one of its main strategies in public policies through the active participation of its member states in the more general process of decarbonization and climate neutral Europe. European countries are at the front line of support of the new environmental and energy policies proposed by the European Commission. This is why Europe, with all its differences, is now looking for a more balanced, secure, and sustainable energy policy framework for the future. On the path of the alternatives to their strong dependence on fossil fuels, the renewable energy model emerged, resulting from the Paris Agreement and the other environmental policies. The challenge of this time should be able to provide an appropriate strategic culture for Europe, particularly in the face of a major global and regional power. This consolidation of the strategic metrics can effectively result in a long-term recognition of Europe, such as a climate and environmental power, and by bringing together the member states in the conceptualization of an affirmative energy and security strategy. And now you have reached the European Green Deal, launched in Brussels on 11 December 2019, which is based on a structured program of 10 pillars and 50 initiatives. And the EU aims to be a global leader in the expression used by the EC President, Ursula von der Leyen. And this is the main challenge of the new European Energy Green Deal, and point out the importance to achieve climate or carbon neutrality in 2050. However, the EU is not a global energy power. Energy resources, raw materials, technical, scientific, technological, industry capacity, and there are also many recent challenges in critical areas, such as digital and cybersecurity. And the global reality of energy in the world is also very complex. And finally, as you know, the EU does not guarantee its security and defense autonomously, and reflect this constant vulnerability to the major global or even regional powers and the complex geopolitical scenarios, particularly in the most recent one. I would like to show you four or five slides, and let me try if it is possible. Let me see. Okay. No. That's okay. I think it's correct. Just a generic approach, maybe for reflection. The slide one, CO emissions, the carbon dioxide chart, just to show you a glance, a global picture. You see the China, Russia, India, USA, and try to identify the Netherlands, France, Spain, or Portugal, and compare. And second one is the global primary energy consumption. Oil is the green one, you see, is the most widely used energy at planet level, but in accelerated fall. And coal still represents about 27.2%. And the natural gas is continually rising and reaching 24.7 in the red one, you see. The hydro and nuclear components remain at around 7% and 4.3% respectively, and the new renewables are rising around 6%. And now you can see the scenario of evolution of energy imports. In reality, it's a dependency, the Europe from the oil, natural gas, and coal. And you can see the scenarios for 2030 and 2050. And now in this slide, I show to you the natural gas pipelines. And I put in yellow the main strategic focal points, and namely, I think you can see the Nord Stream 2, or Northern Lights on Brotherhood, or even Turkish Stream, all from Russia. And TANAP, Trans-Anatolia Pipeline, or TAP, Trans-Adriatic Pipeline from Azerbaijan and Turkey, and others from Algeria and Libya, or even in East Mediterranean area. And this is the last one. This production and concentration of critical raw minerals, materials. Do you see in this map something in Europe? Okay, let's continue. Let me try, no, let me, okay. Let me see if it is possible. Oh. Okay, okay, and can continue. The security and defense are focused on the direct defense of the national interest of the states in the energy security and the protection of critical infrastructures and the protection of strategic regional routes of sea transit, air corridors, and insecurity of logistic supplies. In the case of regional powers, it even ensures influence mechanisms and geopolitical control of the commercial circuits of fuel and the other energy vectors. With the energy transition in progress, we have the notion of its future and innovative implications in its military capacities, operational and logistics, when as part of the priorities set out by the states to guarantee its security and defense. And the implications of regional security at various levels are a constant challenge for policymakers and international organizations. The relationship, the nexus between water, energy, and agriculture, now enhanced by the climate change factor, transforms these structural elements of life into society in a central point, in a focal point of the sustainability and development agenda of countries and regions. The alignment of this strategic game of access and use of resources, as always, determines the actions of the states and take into account the cartography of the world resources, and not only by the existing threats that may be exerted by the military threats or subversive activities, or even terrorism or others, but also by the triggering of crises and natural disasters or mere action of man. The interest of the states in the dispute and control of raw materials and energy resources is not a theme of the past. Remember the previous slides. The commercial expansion of liquefied natural gas or geopolitical mapping of pipelines and the control of critical and strategic minerals, including rare earth, and competition and appropriations of renewables and new nuclear and hydrographic models are some of the multiple examples that are already well visible. The increasing complexity of the network management of the interconnection of systems represent a weakness in the face of another type of ongoing threat, the cyber attacks. As the new integrated energy production and distribution systems have a decentralized and integrated mode, and their control platforms tools become very vulnerable. And this way, the transport and the power distribution and their storage technologies and the replacement process, and as well the areas of the management and control are elements, as can be seen as strategic in the elaboration of an integrated security plans. Hydrogen production based on a renewable energy could be a success in the coming years, as you know. And the transport and storage of hydrogen are the determining factors in the commercial and the competitive process. And as Bart Bywick said, and I quote, hydrogen technology was born and raised in Europe. And we cannot make it happen as with photovoltaics and batteries, where we create these developments, and who produced it? It was China and others. We want to export and maintain jobs in Europe. And finally, there is an ongoing technological, energy and digital revolution. And it is certainly accompanied by a sociological revolution. And giving content to the area of democracy and the European citizenship, seeking to connect politicians and politics to the new generation. As far as geopolitics is concerned, Europe wants to find here space in the way of acting in this circle of clear geopolitical influence. And then we can say, like Yogi Berra, you remember, the future is pretty far, but it doesn't seem like it. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Caetano Sousa, for your presentation. It was very clear, very interesting, and I think we all learned a bit more about this topic. We will now give the word to Mr. Jean-Charles Boulat. He is, I'm sorry, he is an EURODEFENSE France board member, also the director of the European Affairs and NATO at Naval Group from 2012-2020. He was also the chairman of Economic, Legal and Trade Commission of the Aerospace and Defense Association of Europe, and the member of several associations of maritime defense, such as Sea Europe, Board of Euroyards, GIFAS Commission Affairs European. So, Mr. Jean-Charles, whenever you're ready.
Yes, do you hear me? It's clear?
Yes, it is very clear.
Perfect. So effectively, I will try to summarize the topic we are supposed to take care, namely the compatibility between the EU regulations, the member states' defense requirements, and the European Green Deal. Just for your information, in the past, I have already spent a lot of time to interface, I would say, the Commission and the European Defense Agency when the REACH regulation, REACH is a regulation implemented now and taking care of the protection of the production and the use of chemical products. And the large companies have spent a lot of time to discuss with the Commission the most efficient manner to implement this very important regulation, namely the REACH regulation. Just to say that for me, the compatibility between EU regulation and defense requirements is not a new topic. And again, that will probably need quite an intense work to see to which extent I would say the defense specificities will be taken into account when the Parliament, when the Commission, and when the Council will agree and will implement the regulation and the work behind the European Green Deal. Because effectively, I would say the work is already ongoing. And to illustrate what I'm saying, I would just say use two examples. For your information, the European Defense Agency has set up in 2014 a dedicated working group on energy and environmental topics. And so the EDA is already working on I would say, on environmental questions. They are meeting regularly, and they are exchanging with member states representatives about the manner it will be possible for the defense experts to establish a common approach to on energy management and environmental aspect. In the same working group, people are also working about energy savings through energy efficiencies and alternative energy sources. So we have already in Brussels and in the capitals, people trying to implement, I would say, a broad and policy about defense versus energy and environmental activities. So this is one example of what Brussels is already doing. And to complement this picture, I would also quote another EU regulation. I'm not sure that everybody around, I would say, participating to the conference is aware of, but for your information, the European External Affairs Services is trying to implement a specific, I would say, policy named EU Climate Change and Defense Roadmap. So we have already two main players in Brussels trying to see to which extent it will be possible to implement, I would say, a specific policy to take care of environmental and energy questions versus defense requirements. So this is what is already, I would say, on track in Brussels from the defense and the external affairs services on one hand, and on the other hand, I spent during the last days time to read and to try to clarify the manner the European Green Deal will be implemented. As you know, even before the COVID-19 crisis, the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council agreed to launch a very huge initiative named the European Green Deal Investment Plan. So the Vice President, there is a Vice President at the Commission level in charge to implement this huge plan. And the COVID has been effectively, that was rather complicated to implement this Green Deal during the COVID crisis. But quite recently, the Commission has decided to, I would say, to wake up all the necessary working groups and committees to relaunch again the implementation of this huge investment plan. So on one side, we know that people from the defense world know that it would be necessary to do something on this topic, and on the other hand, we know that the Commission has decided this I would say a priority for Ursula von der Leyen, and it's necessary to do something. So clearly speaking, and this is the main aim of my, I would say, subgroup inside the working group, is to see to which extent it would be possible to have effective regulation dealing with environmental questions, and on the other side, regulation taking care of the defense specificities. So this is my understanding of the situation. I will try to get in the next days, next weeks, additional information and precise information on what is ongoing. For information, last information, please take care that the Commission is organizing in November a conference with a forum for sustainable energy in the defense and security sector. That will be the phase 3 of this important initiative. It is organized by the Slovenian government, and that will take place in Ljubljana. So just to sum up what I'm saying, there are already a lot of initiatives ongoing, taking care of, I would say, green question, green investment, and on one side, but we have also, and this is effectively an interesting and important information, we have already in Brussels at least 2 organizations taking care of the defense specificities. So As I said, when we met a few weeks ago during a specific session, it's effectively necessary to see how the EU regulation will take on board the defense requirement, which is a challenge in itself, because as I said at the very beginning, when the REACH regulation has been implemented, we spent a lot of time, I would say, in the capitals, but also in Brussels, to explain to the, I would say, EU Commission experts how it's necessary and important to take on board, during the implementation of the REACH regulation, to take on board the defense specificities. A lot of discussion, a lot of, I would say, exchange to try to be sure that at the end, the chemical product used by the defense, for defense purposes, by the defense forces, will be effectively available, and even with the implementation of the REACH regulation. So I don't know if effectively the Commission will be able to take on board all the necessary defense specificities when the regulation dealing with the European Green Plan, investment plan will be elaborated, but we will have necessary to repeat to the key players in Brussels how it's important to keep in mind the defense specificities when they will work in the next, I would say, next months and even next years. So this is what I have already in mind, and I am ready to answer to your question if you have question with regard to my purpose. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jean-Charles Boulet. We will leave the questions for the end of the presentations when we move on to the debate in order to keep our schedule going. We will now move on, and I would like to introduce Mr. Juan López Díaz, who is an EURODEFENSE Spain board member. He is now a retired Spanish Marine Corps colonel. He has commanded units in all the ranks and served under several forces, such as the Spanish Army, NATO, Eurofor, Euromarfor, Eurocorp, UN Standby Forces. He is also a comms specialist, chief of amphibious course and comms teaching area in the Marine School, and he did the Navy Staff Course, the Joint Staff Course, and the NATO Defense College course in Rome. And he is also the member of Naval Thinking Group in the Spanish Naval Warfare College in Madrid. Mr. Diaz, whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you, Adi. Good afternoon, boa tarde, bonsoir. The topic selected for the Spanish EURODEFENSE team was in the area of energy, geopolitics, and spheres of influence. My team decided to divide the topics in three parts: the new energy geography, European energy transition, and climate change. For today's webinar, I decided to select the first part, the new energy geography, and is divided in the 5 parts that you can see in the slide. The first is the change of the war from only one superpower to a new war and complex new order in the political arena, and several energy sources and supply countries in the energy geography. Also, we will speak about Nord Stream 2, probably one of the causes of the high price of electricity bill nowadays. We will speak about the consequence for the security of the new energy sources, not only problems and some advantages. Also about the influence of the new energy geography for defense matters. Also, we will speak about the risks and threats for the new energy geography. And finally, even that were not expected because we have not yet finished the work, we try to give 2 minimal conclusions about this little first part of our job. The Cold War period headed by United States promoted a multilateral order supported by free trade and deeper economic and political integration among countries. This multilateral war included relatively open markets and technology transfer. But the war is experiencing a new era of competition for greater geographic and economic power, driven by the shifting center of gravity of the global economy from west to the east, the new order of relationship between countries, and rapid technological change. As a consequence, today, the war, post-Cold War, may soon disappear. Energy relationship might become more political and open trade, and it could provoke, if not friction, just that great powers might employ energy relations or energy technology to gain influence over each other. This is the case of Russia and Nord Stream pipeline. Opposition to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was an important point of the foreign policies of both Mr. Obama and Mr. Trump administration, and it was a clear response to Russia's annexation of Crimea and Kremlin's force of using gas as a weapon of coercion in Eastern Europe. The recent decision by the Biden administration to reverse this policy and stop sanctioning to the participants in the pipeline project is seen as a capitulation because the pressure from Germany and a gift to Russian President Vladimir Putin. For Poland, the Nord Stream project remembered the Molotov-Ribbentrop Agreement. A similar thinking exists in Ukraine and other Central and Eastern European countries that have the conclusion that the Biden administration is prepared to make concessions to the cause of their security. All energies, new source, and security implications. A common assertion in recent decades is that oil and gas resources are geopolitically important and subject to intense international competition. It was true during the Cold War period and during the colonial era and the First and Second World Wars. But it is not so clear today. Since the advent of the nuclear era, access to oil probably will not be as decisive in a direct military confrontation between great powers. Can avoid competition new energy resources? As countries become prosumers, it means that produce and consume their own energy from domestic renewable resources. They should become less dependent on the world hydrocarbon resource and should have less reason to compete over them. However, from a liberal perspective, a bigger reliance on domestic renewable energy resource should increase the risk of international conflict, as prosumer countries will be less dependent on one another and have a fewer implement to reduce their bellicosity. Energy in the defense has always been a strategic input to warfighting, but was considered as a task of logistic planners. Security, economic, and environmental factors have recently elevated energy to a strategic level in the military, which will have positive results for warfighting capabilities and lastly, to the civilian energy sector. In addition, more fuel efficient in major weapon systems and reduced logistic requirement can potentially compensate some anti-access area denial efforts by adversaries. Finally, the recent emphasis on life cycle cost effectiveness and energy saving from installations will both reduce operating costs and enhance the resilience of these military bases. Now, we will see the different threats that we have for the new energy geography. The climate change and environmental degradation. Emissions of greenhouse gases is having an impact on the climate, biodiversity, oceans, ice masses, and on the population. All of these can create conflicts, and 2/3 of all these emissions came from the energy sector. Exponential growth of international demand. The incorporation of China and India into the world economy and their access to energy resources could provoke a race between various states to control areas of production and supply flows. Also, it is a risk. The energy market equation. The absence of transparent market is detrimental to competitiveness and to security. It is the case Russia nowadays. Russia decided to reduce the gas to Europe from 81 million to 20 million liters gas every day, just in the 1st of September. It is one of the reasons because the electricity bill nowadays is so expensive. For this reason, it's necessary that managing reserves appropriately and effectively. It is important that the International Energy Agency, established in 1974 with the oil crisis, must to prevent disruptions in the supply of oil, maintaining a strategic reserve of hydrocarbons to ensure security of supply in the event of disruptions by maintaining the established levels of petroleum products, liquefied gases, and natural gas. About the recent threats, we have the economic, insufficient investment in infrastructure and fraudulent activities in the energy sector. Geostrategic, political instability in producer countries, threat to countries and supplier routes, political conflicts between supplier, consumer, and transit countries. It implies the necessity of optimizing the diversification of energy resources. Technical, insufficient energy interconnection, risk of nuclear energy generation or serious industrial accidents and natural disasters, and deliberate, cyber threats and physical attacks to energy infrastructure. Just to conclude, I didn't expect in this presentation to give you any conclusion because we haven't yet finished the work, my team, about this important and complex topic. But at least I have decided to expose some minimal conclusions. About the future of the energy geography and geopolitics in a world of low carbon emissions, there exist two options: to collaborate in between the new energy producers and consumers, or an aggressive competition in a regional and sectorial domain, in an option that probably will not have a winner. And about the energy security, the future of energy security may depend much more on the security and reliability of the electric power system and the security of information systems. It is necessary to promote a dialogue about a common policy about energy security rules, and it must be done sooner rather than later. And it is the end of the first part of the Spanish EURODEFENSE team presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Juan López. We will now be moving on, and I would like to introduce our last but not least guest speaker. We have with us Mr. Jan Wind. He is an EURODEFENSE Netherlands board member, president of the Federation of European Defense Technology Associations, and chairman of the Defense and Security Division of the Royal Netherlands Society of Engineers. He joined the Netherlands Navy in 1973, specialized in electronic engineering at the Royal Netherlands Naval College and the Technical University of Delft. He also followed the Advanced Staff course at the Naval Staff College and the International Relations course at the Klingendale Institute. Mr. Wind, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Annie. It's a long list, and but I would like to talk to you today as in my capacity as president of the Federation of European Defense Technology Associations. And I'll find my presentation. Let me take a look. So, can you see that now? Yes, I will talk to you. Thank you very much, Annie and Working Group 1B for organizing this conference. Very interesting way to cooperate throughout Europe. We should do that more often with our network and with other groups in this network. I will talk to you not about geopolitical challenges or what the policy changes in the European Commission are, but much more on technological challenges that we have and that could be solved in some way. I will not present complete and ready solutions because we don't have them yet, but directions where we can work to. Actually, this what I'm talking about is a report of the previous working group of EURODEFENSE and EDTA 26A that presented their report in February 2019. That is long ago, before we had known about COVID, and almost very hard to remember. And but still, we will use the results of this working group to the follow-on in working group 26B that is just coming on. What we did in that working group is that it resulted in 2 goals to be used for future capabilities that should be built and used by our armed forces. One is to build flexibility into new capabilities, because defense capabilities are usually built for 40 years. Remember, it is 2021 now. When you start building a new capability right now, it will be ready probably in 2030 and then be in service until 2070. That's a long time, and by that time the energy mix that is available for our forces will have changed completely. And so we need to make everyone in our armed forces need to remember and to understand that that it will change over the course of the lifetime of our capabilities. To do that, we should adapt to new technologies as soon as possible and use them in new systems that are being developed. These goals resulted in 5 recommendations, and not we sent those recommendations to the European Commission and others. Not all of them have been followed, but the green marked recommendations are mostly enforced now, not because of us, but the world has changed, and people are looking at that in another way than they did in 2018. So we see now that in member states of the European Union, in contrary of 2018, that the energy transition is very much promoted in military circles, and we're all thinking about what we need to do for the coming decades. Also, developments are being monitored, and all our armed forces throughout Europe are looking at technologies that are needed and suitable for a military capability. So that's a great achievement over the last couple of years. And at EDA, Jean-Charles Boulat already talked about that. We now have a very well established organization that is looking into future energy sources for our armed forces. But this was what we found in 2018 in Spain. Just these couple of things. In Spain, a small scale energy storage and energy reduction program was underway at that time. Not much more than that. In the Netherlands, we found a program to develop a sustainable compound for the army, but it is still not there at the moment. And EDA was ramping up their activities with 2 conferences in 2018, but without a lot of results at that time, and certainly not practical results how to move forward. And the NATO Center of Excellence on Energy Transition in Vilnius was just starting their studies at that time. We looked at technologies at that time in 2018, and we found several areas of technologies that could be suitable to utilize in future capabilities. These were not ready available at that time, but engineers were looking at these new technologies to be developed over the coming 5 or 10 or maybe even more years. So they had potential for implementation, and that's what we're looking at. I will now take you through a couple of these technologies that could be used and that could be interesting to look at in the future, and that could be interesting also from other perspectives to understand what kind of direction we have to look at. The first one is that I hear everybody talking about hydrogen. Many ships and vehicles are now built in a way that they can use hydrogen, but it's usually liquefied and pressurized hydrogen, which is not very suitable for military use. If you shoot a hole in a vehicle or a ship where that is equipped with a liquefied and pressurized hydrogen tank, it will probably explode, and that's not very effective. You don't want to have that happen in your vehicle. So one of the solutions is to store hydrogen in a different manner. And one of the solutions we found in 2018 is that you could store it in sodium, borium, and use that. That is a powder, and that powder can be transported much more easily and recovered into hydrogen in a vehicle or in a ship in a quite easy manner. You would need only a very limited amount of that powder in your vehicle to drive 1,200 kilometers in a car. And you would do that. The ship would not emit carbon dioxide or sulfur dioxide anymore. So that would be a probable method to use. It's still being under development at this time, but that could be looked at in the future for new vehicles that we want to use. The next one I would like to show you, but that is more common. We know that, but there are several developments in nuclear power to be a little bit smaller and less dangerous constructions. And I see Mr. Ernst van Hoek looking at the screen. I know him very well, and he studied this in the past. But that is one of the opportunities that was probably very unlikely to talk about even in 2018, because nuclear power was not something you should use in modern society. But we see that is changing at the moment, and there is much more positive thinking about potential use of nuclear power. But they should be safe, and they should be efficient, and probably they should be small as well. And this technology has a potential to be usable in like containerized versions for military purposes, either on land or on ships. The third one I wanted to show is energy storage. One of the things that we see is when you use solar panels in somewhere out in the desert, you have energy during the day, but during the night you don't have any energy anymore. So you still need diesel engines and other means to generate power. This is a development we found in Norway. A Norwegian company has developed a storage system using concrete. They use concrete at high temperature. With solar energy, you can heat up that concrete, and at night or at other times when you need more energy, you can withdraw the energy from that storage. That is not very vulnerable for in a military situation, when you would store it in, like others propose, into also in hydrogen or in lithium ionide batteries. These are much more vulnerable for damage in a military conflict. So this could be also a solution that could be used in military compounds. They're quite heavy. I talked about this with naval ship developers, and they believe that it would be much too heavy for their ships. But in my mind, they could build the ship just a little bit larger, and then use the same in a safe way. The next one I wanted to show you, which is very much active, being used in all kinds of civilian energy networks, and that is to use energy more efficiently. Not only one power source with one user, but use multiple power sources, multiple storage systems, and multiple users, and then you can divide and use your energy in a more efficient and more effective way than it currently is being done. And that is almost quite far developed at this time in civil society, and would be easily adaptable for military use, and particularly in army compounds. It would be much more suitable than what is being done at the moment. Vehicle design. In civil society, we see now a lot of electrical vehicles. They are often very heavy, and it will be hard to store that much energy that you need in batteries for military vehicles. So what our working group at that time said is that we could look at this kind of development in a different manner in military, and not try to develop the same type of vehicle we have used for a long time, and then try to convert them to electrical vehicles, but use much more automation and try to develop unmanned automated vehicles that do not need as much armor as this example that you can see on the screen, and then they could be then we could cope with less fossil fuel for vehicles. So that's a different way of looking at coping with the challenge of the energy transition. And the same applies for aviation. Aviation engines for fighter aircraft are, and also for transport aircraft are only developed for civilian purposes, and mostly always military engines are derived from civil aircraft. But we could look at other ways of adapting to the energy transition and use unmanned systems that could be a lot lighter. This is an example you can see on the screen that is being thought of about that 2018 time frame by the Netherlands Air Force. To transport containers with storage without any with an unmanned aircraft that could be lighter and less vulnerable for attacks. In Navy, we need very much power and energy to sail for weeks and months over the seas. So there is not a lot that can be done, except for maybe for nuclear power and some short range ships that you could use batteries now. But there we should look at it from another different way. Lighter and smaller and unmanned is probably will not help a lot, because you still need very heavy and large ships. There we should look more at potential for conversion. What we see now is that ships are still being built for with very heavy diesel engines that cannot be removed from submarines or surface ships anymore. And the developers should think of developing ships in a way that you can adapt these ships for with other engines, with other storage capabilities in the future. And one of the things that can be done is to start equipping them with an electrical propulsion, and make it possible to exchange diesel engines by energy storages like the concrete I just showed you, or other options that may emerge in the future. We don't know yet. So that's the way we the working group thought that we could go with navies. What do we see in recent development? The last couple of weeks, or actually just last week, the maritime industry said we need to ramp up the energy transition for our commercial ships, not because energy change is so important, not because we believe that we need to adapt because of the climate change, but just because fossil fuels is becoming too expensive. And because the maritime industry has to pay carbon dioxide emission taxes, and that will increase the price of transport. So they have changed. The maritime industry has changed their goal for 2015 for 2050 from 50% down in fossil fuels to zero emission by default for new ships that are being built from 2030. And that is a challenge that is still will not be met by military ships, and we need to look at what is happening in the maritime industry, because ships that are being developed for our navies right now will not meet that zero emission goal of the maritime industry. So they may need to cope with fuel that is becoming less and less available, or maybe isn't available at all anymore in harbors. We need to adapt faster. And the last we just got from Eduardo Caetano early or last week is a report of the NATO Energy Security Center of Excellence in Vilnius. That was published during the summer, and you can download that from their website, and there you can see similar trends and ideas as I just described. And they have done a lot of work now, and you can see there also other ideas to move forward in the future. And when we continue this working group with working group 26B, the third subgroup will look into these technologies, and will certainly use this NATO report to derive recommendations for the EU from that. That's about what I wanted to say. I had a question mark behind this presentation, but Annie will lead us through those through the debate, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vint. I hope you all enjoyed these outstanding and enlightening presentations. We will now, without further ado, move on to the debate. We already have a lot of questions here. So maybe we will do a first round of 3 questions. I will ask them, or if the people who ask them would like to ask them themselves, they can do it. I would start with the first one from Paulo Gonçalves. Mr. Paulo Gonçalves, I don't know if he wants to ask you directly, or can I ask? Maybe I'll ask it myself. So Mr. Paulo Gonçalves asks if the development of sophisticated military assets takes years. For example, a fire aircraft may take more than 1 decade. Therefore, are there any plans ongoing for a completely new set of European military gear using new green energies? The situation may become such that there will be no fuel fossils available for the military tanks, fighters, frigates, etc. after 2050. So this is the first question. Then the second one is from Mr. Juan López. I believe it's directly for Mr. Jan Vind. He asks about the nuclear energy is not the problem in Europe. The fact that the society don't accept the nuclear energy, not only for the domestic energy necessities, and also no for the military assets. And the third one of this round, the last one for this round, is from Mr. Bart Brouwers. He asks, how will the goals of zero emissions by 2050 be achieved among the military activities? We are not seeing military hardware being designed now in order to meet those goals. Example, a new generation of fighters jet takes decades between the concept phase and the production phase. So if any of our guest speakers would like to answer these questions, you may take the lead.
I think these were quite technological, these questions. That's also always the downside of being the last speaker. Then you get the questions. But I will try to answer probably all of them. Paulo Gonçalves first. You're completely right. The development takes many years, more than a decade. That is certainly true. And what you can see now that in aircraft, no development at all is being done in as you ask in using green energy. Actually, but maybe that's not the fault of the MODs, because in particularly in aircraft engines, it is almost impossible at this time to use other forms of energy. What I can say there is that, for instance, in batteries, you can store energy like in cars at the moment. The difference in the amount of energy per kilogram you can store in a battery and what is being stored in fossil fuel is a factor 20. You need 20 times the amount, the weight in batteries than you need the weight in fossil fuel. So and that is at the moment completely impossible in aircraft. You see some small civil aircraft flying electrically, but they can then fly for what is it? I believe 15 minutes maximum with 3 or 4 passengers. That's all that is possible at the moment. But that's a start, and that will grow in the future. And the other element you said is that we will use them far after 2050. That is one of the worries I have, and particularly for navies. not so much for armies, because army vehicles have a bit less of a lifetime than navy ships. But navy ships that are now being developed and that will be used until 2070, and nobody thinks about that we need to do something else. So that's one of the purposes of this working group. Also, I guess, to make make MODs understand that they have to do something, because they cannot get their fuel anymore after 2050. The second question was by Juan López about nuclear energy. The fact that society doesn't accept. You're right, but when you look at the public opinion at the moment, no, when you look at the public opinion in 2015, when you uttered the word nuclear power at that time, you were probably you were the outcast of the day. You have seen that Germany has shut down all their nuclear plants and replaced them by solar power. Other nations, except for France, are doing that as well. But it is changing. There's now a debate in engineering associations about whether it is possible in civil society, so completely away from what's happening in the military, if it will be possible in 2050 to build enough solar and wind power and other power solutions to avoid the use of nuclear power. And the answer is probably no. That is not possible. And so that means that if that is not possible, we will need some more, and maybe a lot of nuclear power plants throughout Europe. So the society is getting ready to accept more and safe nuclear plants. But that may not be the case in all of our nations, because we are not one Europe. We are a Europe of 27 different nations, and so this space of accepting nuclear energy is different in all of the nations. I guess in France it's just normal to have nuclear power, and in Germany it will be a completely change of mind will be necessary over there, and there's all shades of nuclear power acceptability throughout Europe. And then I need to find the question of Bart Brouwers. Can you I can't find it. Can you repeat that, Annie?
Of course. I'm sorry. I wanted just to point out that this question was not written by Mr. Bart Brouwers. He just sent it to me by the Google Forms. So the question is, how will the goals of zero emissions by 2050 be achieved among the military activities? We are not seeing military hardware being designed now in order to meet those goals.
The answer is it won't happen. And we need to push forward to make it happen, at least for a bit. Equipment that's being commissioned right now, even when it's ready today, it will be in service until beyond 2050. And so zero emission in 2015 is not possible unless you just discard current systems and current capabilities and replace them by that time. But that will cost that much money that most of the European armed forces will not be able to afford it. We are most of the nations, if not all, are way below the 2% NATO goal. And we just don't have that money to do that. So my proposal is to push from EURODEFENSE and EDTA as hard as possible to work on changes and to make it at least a little bit possible to get new energies, but it will be hard to achieve that before 2050.
Thank you so much for answering these questions. We will now do a second round of questions. I'm not sure who the author of this question is, but I will ask it. Will the drive for green energy speed up the development of battery technology for military purposes, especially UAV, USV, and UUVs? Maybe some of you would like to answer it. Mr. Eduardo Caetano Sousa, if you like, I don't know if you'd like to answer this question or some of the other.
Okay, let me remember one thing. In this moment, we don't have a clear picture about the future. We have only scenarios for 2030, 2050, but we need to start urgently in the society and the different models of society, and of course in the military one. The decarbonizing defense is an imperative and an opportunity like the other components of the civil society. And I can say the military one is a fast follower for the civil components of the society in development of all the energy sectors, even in the renewables, the new renewables energy, or the old ones, the fossil fuels. But you are facing the big problem, and our problem of our society as the United Nations always said is the climate change, and you need to act immediately. And this is a challenge for the society, and this is also a challenge for the military one. And we need to separate in the defense what is the mission critical capabilities and what is the logistic one, or the supply, or the other missions we can consider no critical missions. And we have a global spectrum of energies. The new ones, we are in the development process. The others, as the nuclear, as we have been talking about in the last minutes. And we have an important component of the correlation with energy models and the environmental. The great innovative energy plans as a maturation models with range 10 or to 20 years. And this scenario applies a development of a state-of-the-art projects in the defense. And as you see, this is a real area, or the defense economy can also play a major role here. The answer in the objective answer, and which is the best energy, or the models, we have, I think, we have no doubt that the new energy renewables is the future. No doubts about that. But we have a different components, a different vectors of the energy. It's not primary energy, but it's the vectors, like the hydrogen or like others. But it's not time today to think we can not consider or not take in consideration the natural gas or something like that, because you think in the energy security. When you think in the energy security, you need to think in all these kind of energies. And you need to think in Europe. What is our thinking to the future and to preserve the security energy of our countries and Europe as the whole? And I'm sure in the next 10 years, maybe we have a great development in the new energy renewables, which could be applied to the military forces and to our goals and to preserve our capacities in electricity and facilities, or as you know, in the vehicles, vessels or aircraft or something like that. It's time to planning the all capabilities for the different countries of Europe, join these capabilities and go away to produce a concrete plan to follow the civilian departments and to create a really supply chain in order to contribute for the missions of the armed forces and to reduce at some time the emissions and preserve the low carbon goals and objectives, and at the same time, as Mr. Genuine said, to incentive the industry. It's sometimes you can incentive the industry and reduce the carbon footprint and their products and operations. And this is why I have no clear answer what is the best or not, but we have one route to give a right direction to achieve these goals.
Thank you, Colonel. I believe Mr. Jan Wind has something to say about battery technology. I would just like to ask you to keep it brief so we can check the other questions too.
I will do that. The question you just mentioned before was about battery technology. Is there anything being under development? Right now, what we see is that the current lithium-ion batteries are being improved. That will increase their capacity probably 2 or 3 times in the coming 5 years, but that's still not the 20 times we need to use them in aircraft, and there is a problem. But when you look at this increase in power in 3 or 4 years, then you might expect that by 2035 or 2040, we are quite a lot in the right direction. There's no scientific proof yet that it will be possible, but we believe that it can be done.
Thank you.
I can talk about that for hours, but I won't.
So we have 3 other questions, maybe 4 if we have time. Mr. Patrice Mompeyssin has a question directly for Mr. Jan Wind. He asked, I will ask 3 questions and then we move on to the answers. So the first one is, are the solutions dual use, civilian and military? Who is in the lead? I believe this was asked in midst of your presentation. The next one is from Marcel. Maybe Mr. Jean-Charles Boulat would like to answer it. It's armed forces are a national responsibility, but MODs tend to ignore national policies to curb CO2 emissions. How could the EU put more pressure on the military to comply with the EU Green Deal? And the last one, maybe for Mr. Juan López, is from Mr. Ion Grant. He thanks for your presentations and asks what discussions are taking place with the big oil and gas companies re-security of strategic stocks of fossil fuels for legacy platforms, and readings these CEOs work on batteries. Thank you. So Mr. Vind, if you'd like to ask.
Yeah, you want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll answer the question about dual use. It's a very interesting question because yes, they are not weapons, so all these technologies are capable of dual use, and often the civil society is going up front with these developments, so we can use what is being developed there. But I wanted to use the opportunity to point at one thing. When you want to develop something like synthetic diesel fuel, because that is an interesting topic at the moment, the cost of that development should be not so much because you cannot sell synthetic diesel at the fuel station, at the gas station in your hometown for 2 or 3 euro per liter more. Only a few cents could be possible, and governments could do something in their taxes. But it's not like that you have a lot of leeway there in the cost of the fuel. But when you look at a compound in Afghanistan over the past years, we have calculated that the cost of 1 liter of diesel fuel being transported to a compound in Afghanistan cost about 50 euro, 50 euro. Because of cost of transportation, cost of protection, you need to protect the transport from the airport to the compound. If you now can find technologies that can generate something like synthetic fuel on the spot, the army will be prepared to pay 25 euro per liter easily, which is about 10 times as much as in your hometown. So there is a lot more possible by armies, and my suggestion would be that the military develops these technologies for their applications in these adverse circumstances, like it was in Afghanistan or at sea, and then they can be transferred later to civil society.
Thank you. I don't know if Mr. Boulat would like to answer the second question.
Yes. Again, that has been said before. I think that basically speaking, we should split in 2 parts the defense mission. Maybe on one part, the logistic and training missions, and on the second part, the military missions. Back to what you said, we can imagine that effectively the Commission will be able to discuss with the national MODs the manner they will try to reduce their environmental impact for logistic and training missions. You can imagine that effectively the Commission will pay attention to this kind of, I would say, fuel consumptions. For the military missions, I am more skeptical, because for me, again, in the near future at least, the MODs will continue to consider that for in case of I would say military missions, it is really necessary to use what is available at the time of the I would say of the military situation. No way to imagine that a battalion will use, or I would say wind sails for just to save energy when they are battling against I would say an enemy. So again, for logistic missions, yes, we can imagine that the Commission will be able to convince the nations to do something. For military missions, that will be more complicated. And back to what has been said before, I would like maybe to put on the table a general remark. Again, yes, it's probably necessary to push the nations to launch new cooperation for specific initiative in technology. And EDA, to my understanding, would be the most efficient place to launch specific and dedicated research for a new kind of new sources of energy, new technologies necessary, as Jan said before, necessary to achieve, I would say, the military mission on one hand and the Green Deal on the other hand. So for me, this is definitely a priority. Eurodefense should take care, because again, nothing to my knowledge is really done. Again, for your information, at least last year, we signed, I would say, the group of the main, I would say, naval shipyards have signed an agreement with the Commission. And inside the research program, there is a dedicated part for energy saving and energy management in the naval ships. So just to say that there are already people thinking about, I would say, this kind of topics, but it's not sufficient. We need to ask for more action and more money dedicated to military to innovation in this field. So this is my global remark. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much. Mr. Lopez, if you'd like to ask the third question, I can repeat it if you want.
Yes, sorry, I am not so sure about the question, but as far as I know, in this autumn, the strategic reserve of oil and fossil fuels for the different countries in Europe are empty regarding any other year in the history, probably. And it is the reason because China, after the summer and after the pandemic, need a lot of gas. And the gas came from Russia, and Russia send the gas to China. So we will have many problems in Europe for the next future against our energy. It is because the reason I asked to Mr. Yang Wing about if it is probably that the nuclear energy, until the renewable energies are working, and we must spend time until the renewable are ready, if we don't need nuclear energy, because we cannot support this level of prices in the electricity bill, as we can see this year, but this is not an exception. This will be the rule. Why? Because China and India, they need so many energy that we have not enough energy in Europe, and we will not have in the near future. So probably not in Germany, the nuclear energy is the same in my country. We have closed the most of our nuclear power. But I am not sure if we can stay without nuclear power in the near future. I don't know if it is the question of this name.
Thank you so much. We have two more questions. We are a little out of our time, but I think we have just a small bit to answer them. The first one is what the state of development and implementation is with regards to the major world powers like the US, Russia, China, and of course the European countries. And Mr. Paulo Gonçalves asks once again a geopolitical international relations question. Will in the future we see the disrespect of zero emissions policy by some countries be a motive for conflict regarding the countries that are making sure their population is complying with zero emissions? So if any of you would like to answer these. Anyone can take the lead.
Regarding the last one, it is evident that it's the same that with the vacuum. It means could not be possible that part of the population refuse to comply to do the regulations for the zero emissions. It means it is compulsory, will be compulsory. So European Union must put any penalty for any country that the population decide not to do the regulations to arrive to the zero net emissions. So it is not any other solution.
Thank you so much. Regarding the other question, would any of our guest speakers like to take the lead and answer it?
Jean-Charles Boulat speaking. If I may just to react to what Jan has said. Effectively, we have also to convince the Commission to put money through the European Defense Fund, put money for innovation in the management of energy. But again, we have to convince the Commission, and we are not alone. I would say that you know probably that the debates about the content of the work programs is an intense debate. Electronics companies are there, aeronautic is there. Everybody is looking for a piece of the cake. So yes, we need probably to insist on the topics related to the energy savings and the new sources of energy.
My suggestion would be, if I may, Annie, my suggestion would be even stronger, and that is what we did in the recommendations of the previous working group. The European Defense Fund, which contains huge amounts of money, the European Commission could introduce a rule, an easy rule, that all proposals, all the thousands of proposals they will get, have to contain a paragraph on energy transition. How do they cope with the 2050 goals? And ask those industries to do so. And then the Commission and others who decide on those projects can decide which is the best. And that'll help us in moving forward in energy transition, rather than looking the other way and waiting until it all happens.
Thank you so much. If no one has any further questions, I want to thank you for answering these questions and for your presentations. I would now give the word to Mr. Patrice. I believe he had something to say.
Yes, I would like again to thank EURODEFENSE EWG and EURODEFENSE Portugal to have organized this webinar. I want to also to mention Eduardo Caetano de Sousa, who has also played a key role. Just a word from, because we have the label of La Fabrique Défense, which is an initiative by the French Minister of Defense. And it's really in phase with what we are doing, because they are trying to develop a European strategic culture, and mainly among the youth community. So this is open to everybody in Europe. So if you have an activity which could be placed under La Fabrique Défense, it's open to everybody. And at the end of January, there will be a big event in Paris. I have spoken about that to all the chapters. So thank you, Annie. Also, you have very well moderated. And
thank you so much.
Thank you to all to have participated in this webinar. We were nearly 70 to register, and a little less for participating, but at the end everybody has remained, and not too many people have left to go to dining. So thank you to all, and to the speakers also.
Thank you so much. In the name of the EURODEFENSE Jovem Portugal, it was a pleasure having you with us, and I believe that these debates are very important and allow us to be all together, and we hope to do it again in the future.
And it will